She opened her eyes to the sound of her own heartbeat thudding in her ears. Blood trickled down her wrist, soaking into the red rose petals scattered across the floor. The apartment was silent, too silent. The ring box lay open near the doorway. The engagement ring was gone, and so was James. Nina never expected her Valentine's Day to end like this. Hours earlier, everything felt like a dream. She had just come home from work, exhausted, stressed, still wearing her office blazer. The moment she opened the door, she gasped. Candlelight flickered across the walls. A trail of rose petals led her into the living room. Soft jazz hummed from the speakers, and in the center of it all stood James, her boyfriend of 2 years, wearing a goofy smile and holding 2 glasses of wine. "Happy Valentine's, babe," he said. "Dinner's ready." Her heart melted. James wasn't usually this romantic. In fact, he barely remembered their anniversary last year. But this was a fantasy. A perfectly cooked steak, mashed potatoes with truffle oil, a bottle of Merlot and chocolate lava cake for dessert. The kind of night girls posted about online with captions like, "He's the one." They laughed, talked about taking a trip to Italy, getting a dog, maybe even buying a little house outside the city. James held her hand across the table, looked into her eyes and said, "I have a surprise after dessert." She thought it might be a necklace or maybe tickets to a show. What she didn't expect was a text from an unknown number. "He isn't who you think he is. Check the second drawer of his desk." Nina blinked at the message. She hesitated. For a second, she thought it might be spam. But something about the timing, something about the chill that ran down her spine, made her stomach turn. James was still in the kitchen, washing the dishes, humming to himself. She stood quietly, walked into the study. Her pulse quickened as she reached for the desk. The second drawer creaked open. Inside were dozens of printed photographs. She flipped through them quickly, at first thinking maybe it was a weird photography project, but her fingers froze. Every photo showed a woman, alone, most unconscious. Some bruised, all of them terrified. One photo stopped her cold. It was her, lying on her side, eyes closed, her shirt halfway unbuttoned, her arm limp. She didn't remember that moment. She didn't remember anything like it. The room spun. Then she heard it. Footsteps behind her. "James." "You weren't supposed to see that," he whispered. Her blood turned to ice. She spun around, heart in her throat. He was holding a wine bottle in one hand, like a club. His face wasn't smiling anymore. It was blank, cold, calculating. "I told myself I wouldn't hurt you," he said slowly. "You were different." Nina didn't speak. She couldn't. Her legs moved before her brain did. She bolted toward the door, but her foot slipped on a petal and she crashed to the floor. Her hand landed on the broken wine glass, slicing open her wrist. James lunged. She screamed, kicking blindly, landing a hit in his ribs. He grunted and fell back. She crawled, blood dripping down her arm, into the bedroom and slammed the door. Shut, locked it. The silence outside was worse than the screaming. Then his voice, calm, smooth, almost sad. "You know, I almost proposed tonight. Thought I'd try something new. But curiosity always ruins things. You just had to look, didn't you?" Nina scanned the room, dizzy, desperate. No phone. He must have taken it. Her only chance, the window. She grabbed a lamp, smashed it through. The glass, shards exploded outward. Cold February air rushed in. The fire escape, 5 stories up. The door behind her shook, once, twice, then the crack of wood. No time. Nina climbed out barefoot, glass slicing into her soles. She didn't feel the pain, only fear down the narrow stairs, every step slick with frost. Behind her, the window shattered again. James was coming. She jumped the last 2 flights and hit the pavement hard. Her ankle twisted, but she got up and limped across the street into the convenience store. "Help!" she screamed, blood on her arms, hair wild. The clerk dropped his phone. A customer gasped. Someone called 911. James never made it out of the building. The police found him hiding in the laundry room, calm as ever. They arrested him without a fight. But that's not what made the headlines. What they found in his storage unit the next morning made national news. Over 100 photographs. Dozens of ID cards, a fake nurse's uniform, vials of sedatives and a hidden room. Mattress, chains, soundproof walls. It was a kill room. No doubt. But here's the part that no one could ever explain. The text, the warning. Check the second drawer. The number that sent it didn't trace to any device. It disappeared hours later. No name, no signal, no location. Nina asked the detectives. They shrugged. We thought maybe a victim. Someone who got away, one said. But when they ran the photos through facial recognition, the results were worse than anyone imagined. Most of those women never reported missing, never identified. It was like they vanished without a trace. Nina couldn't sleep for weeks, even after James was sentenced. Even after she moved to another city, changed her number, started therapy. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart raced. Every time she opened a drawer, her hands trembled. She started noticing cameras in public, noticing who sat near her on the train, who stood too close in elevators. She barely trusted herself anymore. But there was something else, a feeling she couldn't shake. That message didn't come from a victim. It felt watched, like someone knew exactly when she would find it, and exactly how to save her. 6 months later, Nina received a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a plain envelope with a single line written inside. You looked. That's why you're still alive. Her hands shook. She never told anyone. She burned the letter the same night, but she never forgot. Because deep down, she knew James wasn't working alone. 6 months after James was arrested, Nina still woke up at 3:17 a.m. every night. The same time, the same dream. She'd see herself standing in James's apartment, looking into the drawer again. Only this time, there were hundreds of photos, and they'd start moving like a slideshow of horror. Her own face would appear last, eyes open, lifeless, and just as she turned to run, she'd hear the whisper behind her, "You looked. That's why you're still alive." Then she'd wake up drenched in sweat. Her therapist called it residual trauma, but Nina knew better. Something wasn't finished. She'd moved to a new city, Albany, rented a small upstairs apartment with bars on the windows and 3 locks on the door, cut her hair, changed her name on social media. She even stopped telling people about James. It wasn't worth reliving, but sometimes trauma knocks anyway. It started on February 1st, a plain envelope in her mailbox, no return address. Inside, a single photo, an overhead shot of her at the grocery store checkout line, from maybe a ceiling camera or a long lens. She was looking down at her cart, alone, no message, no name. She stared at it for hours. Was it James? No, he was in prison. She checked. Maximum security, no parole, no phone privileges. So who? The next day, another envelope. This time, a receipt, her own. For a coffee she'd bought at 7:13 a.m. near her building. Someone had circled the timestamp in red ink. She didn't tell the police, not yet. Part of her thought she might be spiraling. Maybe it was just paranoia. But on the 4th day, it got personal. This time, the envelope contained a USB drive. She plugged it in. There were 5 folders, each labeled with a name she didn't recognize, but one of them, Margot Winters, had a note inside. She looked too. February 14th, 2021. They never found her body. Her blood went cold. She clicked the folder. Photos. Dozens of them, just like the ones James had kept. Margot, 20-something, red hair, seen in different places, walking her dog, reading at a cafe, lying unconscious in a bedroom that looked eerily like James's old place. Nina backed away from the screen, bile rising in her throat. She was being pulled into something, again. But this time, it wasn't about James. It was about who was still out there. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat on the floor of her apartment looking at the USB, wondering if she should call the cops. But what could she say? Hi, someone's sending me envelopes of my daily life and evidence of a woman who disappeared 4 years ago. She knew what they'd think. She knew what trauma looked like on paper. She'd studied her own diagnosis enough. But she also knew fear, the real kind, the kind that hides in plain sight, behind normal people. Behind boyfriends who cook dinner and light candles and tell you they love you. So she made a decision. She'd find out who sent the photos, and she'd find out what happened to Margot Winters. February 10th, Nina started at the edges. She searched. Margot's name, found a missing person report from early 2021. A blog post by Margot's sister, a Reddit thread with only 2 comments, one of them cryptic. She met someone on Valentine's, then gone. No trace. Sounded familiar. She emailed, "The sister." No reply. That night, she got another envelope. Inside was a key, small, rusted, like one for a locker, and a train ticket. Albany, Shroon Lake, February 12th, 9:15 a.m. She stared at it for a long time. Was this a trap, or was this someone trying to show her the truth? She packed a small bag and took the train. February 12th, Shroon Lake was freezing, a small, almost forgotten town in the mountains. The train station was empty, just a waiting bench, a vending machine, and a row of lockers along the wall. Locker 117, that's where the key fit. Clicked inside was a black box and a phone, a burner. It lit up when she touched it. One message. Go to 47 Hillstone Road. Ask for Elise. She should have left. She should have turned around, but she didn't. She called a cab. The house at 47 Hillstone looked abandoned, wooden porch cracked, shutters dangling, snow halfway up the door, but the front door was unlocked. "Hello?" Nina called, stepping inside. Silence, then a voice from the back room. "You came." She followed it. In a candlelit living room sat a woman. Pale, mid-30s, eyes sunken, hair messy. She looked like she hadn't slept in years. "I'm Elise," she said. "You're the girl from the photos, the one who got out." Nina nodded. Slowly. "You sent them?" "No," Elise whispered. "She did." Nina froze. "Who's she?" Elise stood, shuffled to a cabinet, pulled out a thick file of paper and dropped it on the table. Clippings, photos, notes, all about James, all about his victims, and every page had the same name scribbled in the corner, K. Gray. "She's been following these men for years," Elise said. "The ones like James, the ones who look normal. She tracks them, warns women, sometimes saves them, sometimes she's too late." "She?" Nina repeated. "Who is she? A cop?" "No," Elise said. "She used to be a victim, but she disappeared after her attack, changed her name, lives off the grid now. No one knows what she really looks like anymore, but she's always watching." Nina's heart raced. "Why me?" Elise handed her a photograph, faded, taken through a window. It was Nina, months ago, talking to James outside a bookstore. "She knew about him before you did," Elise whispered. "But she never interferes directly. Only if she thinks a woman might survive, if she thinks you'll listen." Suddenly, the phone in Nina's pocket buzzed. The burner. One new message. "You're being followed. Leave now." Nina looked at Elise. "Elise, did you tell anyone I was coming?" Elise's face twisted. "No." "Why?" Outside, a car door slammed, then another. Footsteps. Fast. Nina bolted to the front window. 2 men, black coats. One of them was holding something in his hand, metal. Maybe a run, Elise said, grabbing her arm. They escaped out the back into the woods, snow up to their knees, branches slicing their faces. The cabin behind them grew smaller. Then a loud boom. Nina turned just in time to see the house explode in flames. She fell backward, eyes wide. "Elise, what was that?" Elise looked at her, dead serious. They don't want anyone finding her, and they don't want you talking to me. Who are they? Elise didn't answer. She just pointed toward the hills. There's another place, a safe house. It's where Kay Gray sends people like us. If we can make it by morning, we'll be okay. Nina didn't ask how far. She just followed. Through snow, through trees, through the night. The trail of Kay Gray. They walked in silence through the frozen woods. Elise led the way with nothing but a flashlight that flickered every few minutes. Nina followed, heart pounding, each crunch of snow beneath her boots louder than the last. Behind them, the sky glowed faint orange, what was left of the house. Nina's lips were cracked, her fingers numb. But something in her wouldn't stop. Not now, not after what she'd seen. Where are we going? She finally asked, her voice hoarse. There's a cabin, Elise said. Deep in the Adirondacks. She calls it the Orchard. She sent others there. It's safe, but we have to keep moving. Nina glanced over her shoulder. Every time a branch snapped, she jumped. Who were those men? The ones who burned the house? Elise didn't answer at first. Then quietly, some called them the cleaners. Nina frowned. What does that mean? They're not cops, not FBI. They work for whoever's trying to bury this. Every time a woman gets too close, they're sent to erase the mess. Nina stopped walking. You're saying there's a whole network of people protecting men like James? Elise turned slowly. I'm saying some of these men are valuable to powerful people. James wasn't the beginning, and he won't be the end. By dawn, they reached an old, snow-covered orchard with a crumbling barn in the distance. Elise pushed open a wooden cellar door hidden beneath the brush. They stepped into darkness. Inside was a single room. Concrete floor, small table, 2 chairs, shelves lined with canned food and lanterns. And in the center, nailed to the wall, was a bulletin board covered in string, photos, maps, and symbols. Nina stared. The board was a war room. Photos of at least 20 women, each with a date. Some crossed out in red, some circled in blue, some had question marks. She spotted her own photo in a red sweater. Date, Feb 14, 2024. Next to it, Nina Reed, survived. Below that, in handwritten ink, trust earns truth. KG Nina swallowed hard. She's been watching all of us, she whispered. She doesn't trust the system, Elise said. She believes the women who were ignored. She documents what no one else will. But where is she? Nina asked. I need to talk to her. Elise shook her head. No one meets her. Not really. She leaves signs, clues, instructions, sometimes a call, never a face. Nina stepped closer to the board. Near the bottom was a folder labeled MW. Case file Margot Winters. She opened it. Inside were screenshots of texts, police reports, crime scene photos, unreleased to the public. Even a typed transcript of a conversation between Margot and someone saved as Valentine. Valentine, 2:13 to 21. You trust me, don't you? Margot, I don't know. Valentine, I booked the cabin for us. Just one night, total privacy, no pressure. Margot, where is it? Valentine, just north of Mirror Lake. GPS will kill the mood. I'll pick you up at 7. The text ended there. Nina's stomach twisted. She turned to Elise. Did anyone ever check that cabin? No one knew it existed. Then let's find it. February 13th, 4:20 p.m. They borrowed an old rusted Jeep from the shed. Elise knew the roads. Nina knew the feeling. That awful tightening in her chest when you're getting close to something that could kill you or free you. Mirror Lake was quiet in the winter, frozen over. Tourists gone, but deep in the woods after a winding dirt road and a broken fence, they found it. The cabin, secluded, wooden, no path leading in. The air smelled like pine and rot. Nina got out, boots crunching on ice. Stay here, she told Elise. You sure? No, but I have to. She stepped onto the porch. Each creak felt like a countdown. She tried the door, unlocked, The inside was frozen in time, blankets still folded, dishes in the sink, wine glasses on the table. A single red rose wilted in a vase. It looked untouched, but in the corner it was a stain. Dark, faded. She bent down, dried blood. Near it a bracelet, cheap, plastic, the kind you win at a fair. Nina picked it up, eyes watering. MW was carved into the back. Suddenly the floor creaked behind her. She turned. Nothing, just silence. Then her phone buzzed. A message. No more looking. Her heart stopped. No number. No contact name, just that. Nina backed away. Slowly, her breath sharp. She turned to leave, but the front door slammed shut. She ran to it. Pulled. Locked. She was trapped. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a photo. Liv, from inside the cabin. It was her, bending over the bracelet, a caption, "Curiosity kills." Then came a knock from inside the cabin. She spun around. From the closet, faint, steady, knock, knock, knock. She stepped toward it, heart in her throat, each step like walking into her own grave. She opened the door. Darkness, and then a woman, bound, gagged, eyes wide with terror, barely breathing. She wore a medical bracelet, faded and cracked. "Winters, Margot." Nina gasped. "Oh my God." She yanked the ropes, pulled the gag out. Margot coughed violently, trying to speak. Nina held her face. "You're okay. You're alive. You're okay." "Trap," Margot whispered. "They knew you'd come." Behind them, footsteps. Too late. A man stepped through the back door, calm, smiling. Not James. Someone worse. He wore black gloves and a red Valentine's Day tie. "Hello, Nina," he said. "We've been expecting you." The Valentine Manina's body froze. The man in the Valentine tie stepped further into the cabin, his black gloves shining faintly in the low light. Behind her, Margot was still tied, half-conscious, whispering, something Nina couldn't make out. The man tilted his head. "Relax. You found her. That's what you wanted, isn't it?" "Who are you?" Nina demanded. He smiled like he'd been waiting for that question. "Names don't matter. Stories do, and yours is about to end perfectly." He pulled something from his coat, a syringe, clear fluid. No label. Nina backed toward Margot, placing herself between the man and the closet. "Touch her, and I swear..." "You'll what?" he said, amused. "Bleed on me?" He stepped closer, calm, confident, like he'd done this before. Too many times. Then a crackling sound came from outside. A voice. "Nina!" It was Elise. The man's smile faded. Nina acted fast. She grabbed the wine bottle from the table and threw it at him, hard. It shattered against his shoulder, giving her just enough time to lunge at the door and unlock it. "Elise, he's here!" Nina screamed. Elise was already running in, holding a flare gun she'd found in the Jeep. "Step back!" Elise yelled. The man didn't flinch. "You won't shoot!" "Try me." He took one step forward. She fired. The flare burst into flames. Mid-air, hitting the wall behind him. The dry wood caught instantly. Smoke filled the room. The man turned and ran through the back door, disappearing into the trees. Nina raced to Margot and untied her completely. Margot collapsed in her arms. "We're getting out of here," Nina whispered, choking on smoke. Together, they escaped into the freezing woods as the cabin behind them went up in flames. 1 week later, undisclosed safe house, upstate New York. Margot was asleep in the other room. Nina sat at the small wooden desk, staring at the open laptop. On the screen was an encrypted message from an unknown sender. Subject line, "Case closed. File, KGX." Attached, a single audio recording. She clicked play. At first, only static. Then, a voice, distorted, female. "This is Kay Gray. If you're hearing this, it means you survived." Nina leaned in, pulse racing. "I've spent the last 10 years tracking patterns no one wants to see. Women vanish around Valentine's Day. Different cities, different names, same method. Always someone charming, kind, thoughtful, until he isn't." Static buzzed again, then cleared. James was one of them, so was the man in the tie. They're not lone wolves, they're a system, protected by money, power, and fear. And every time I get close, someone tries to bury the truth. Nina felt a chill down her spine. I don't work with the police. I don't go to the press. I work with survivors, you, the ones who made it out alive. The ones willing to burn the house down if it means saving just one more. There was a pause. I've watched you, Nina. You're not done yet. Click. End of message. Later that night, Margot stirred awake. Nina brought her tea. They ever catch him? Margot asked. Nina shook her head. Not yet. Margot looked out the window. He'll come back. I know, Nina whispered, a long silence. Margot reached into the bag Elise had packed and pulled out a sealed envelope. This was hidden in the cabin. It had your name on it. Nina opened it slowly. Inside, a photo, old, black and white. A little girl standing in front of a Valentine's Day card store, holding a teddy bear. Scribbled on the back, "Truth doesn't hide, it watches. KG." Nina stared at the girl. Her eyes were familiar. She turned to Margot. Do you know who this is? Margot nodded. It's her, Kay Gray. Nina blinked. But how do you know that? Margot hesitated, then quietly. Because she's my sister. 3 months later. Portland, Maine, a man in a sharp red tie walked into a coffee shop. He ordered espresso, sat by the window, flipped. Open a leather journal. On the 3rd page, a list, women's names, some crossed out. The barista came over, smiling. Mr. Hart, your drink. He looked up and smiled warmly. Thank you, dear. She left. He turned back to his journal and paused. A note was sitting on the table that hadn't been there before. No one had approached. No one had passed. Just a plain white card with 2 words. We see you. His face drained of color. He stood, fast, scanning the room. Everyone looked normal, too normal. Then, from a booth in the back, a woman closed her laptop, stood up and walked out the door without looking at him. As she passed the window, he caught a glimpse of her. Red scarf, gloves, and a scar across her cheek. He knew that scar. Nina. He dropped the journal and fled. Outside, Nina smiled. She turned the corner where Elise and Margot were waiting in a black SUV. He saw you? Elise asked. He saw enough, Nina replied, slipping into the seat. Margot held out a second note. You ready? To hunt? Nina took it, smiled, and whispered, let's finish what she started. The end.